This is Marketing Uncomplicated. Today we're talking about branding, but not logos, colors, or taglines. We're talking about relationships. My guest is Marc Rust, creative strategist, TEDx speaker, and founder of Consequently Creative. I love the name, by the way. Marc has worked across
Thanks.
private equity portfolios, fast scaling companies, and purpose driven brands, helping them break patterns and articulate what they really are and who they really are, not just what about they sell. Marc describes branding as dating. Love that. Not broadcasting. And in a world that's becoming more automated and AI driven and also really loud, the idea couldn't be more relevant. If you've ever struggled to make your brand feel human, distinct, or emotionally resonant, this conversation is for you. Welcome to the show, Marc. We're really pleased to have you.
Thank you, Sasha. I'm glad to be here.
So, you describe yourself as a pattern breaker. I love that. What patterns in branding are you most often helping companies break?
Just really, I'm helping them go away from acting like a company to acting like humans. Believe it or not, I mean, we're in a situation where you know companies brag and show off and forget that we're actually humans relating to humans. If you met somebody, a human, right, and this person said, "Hey, Sasha, I'm amazing. I've got a lot of friends. I've got a lot of clients. I have a lot of money in the bank. I've got 5 sports cars and a huge house." Would you want to know more about this person? Would you want to have a relationship with this person? Probably not, right? But why is it
Right.
okay for companies to act this way?
Yeah,
We
I
need
love
to,
that.
to me, branding is me relating to you, whether I'm a company or a person or whatever. We're humans. And I find that if brands focus on the small little things that actually make us pick up something and buy it or engage with something, then they'll do just far better with their business.
Yeah, I love that you say it's like dating and it's not broadcasting because I feel that there's a tendency of brands to just sell themselves and talk about themselves constantly. Like you say about, this person that says,
Yeah.
"Hi, I have a bunch of friends, I have a bunch of cars, I have this house, I have all the money in the bank." But they're not really forefronting why they've created what they've created, right? And it's
Yeah.
just in their face about product, service, product, service, product, service. And it's like, well, okay, that's great, but why have you actually created it? So
Exactly.
I agree
Well, I
with
mean,
that.
you have companies who get it and companies who don't get it.
Yeah.
And the rules have changed,
And I
because
ask you, the companies that don't get it, are they the ones that are resisting change in essence, or they just don't want to see it?
well, there's really two companies in that category. Yes, those that are resisting change, exactly like you said, the old school company that wants to broadcast a message and wait for an echo, right? So that's like the company that, and it works for some companies, by the way.
Yeah.
Billboards on the highway, some ads on TV where it's just a one-way street. That's fine. But then you have those who just don't get it because they're using new technology in an old school way, like spamming you with, email spam is one thing that we've known for a while, but now let's say there's a new social media or a new platform, and these companies go on there and they use the same practices as before, and they just spam the crap out of you. And we see these companies on Instagram, TikTok, what have you, and we instantly recognize that, okay, this isn't quality content, this is spam, and it's not trying to build a relationship with me and to build value.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. You've worked across a range of different companies, and both private equity backed companies and purpose driven startups, which
Hmm.
I like the scaling here. What branding mistakes do they both make? Is it in different ways? Is it almost similar? I'd be really curious to hear that.
um you know it's just amazing that companies don't know how to talk about themselves fundamentally, and the biggest mistake is that they don't think of themselves as a human, right? And so they come up with a clever tagline that sounds great, but in fact it doesn't convey the right message. it doesn't attract the audience. You still go to this company and you're like, wait a minute, what do they do? You know, it's because they're not just like stopping a little bit and saying, "Hey, wait a minute. What do we stand for? Why are we doing this? And why should people care?" The companies who do that obviously are building deeper relationships and deeper connections with their audiences. So that's the number one thing that they're not doing. I mean, I I go to a lot of networking events, and I was at one 2 weeks ago where this guy had a fantastic company, fantastic idea, but I had to ask him 4 or 5 questions in order to get to that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he had this logo, and it was called, I think it was something called Blue Bridge or something. That's great, but you're not telling me what you do. You're not giving me reasons to believe, right? I mean, we talk about a world where we've got mass information and an overabundance of information. How are you supposed to make an impact in that world? How are you supposed to be heard, right? The only way to do it is to be unique and to be absolutely clear in what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. And I have a question in regards to that where, they say where you say, they don't know who they are as like as a human or a person. Do you find that when you dig in, a lot of them don't really know their target audience? Because that really then becomes convoluted messaging in market when they don't really sit and do the work, because maybe you've had experience in this, but some founders think that they're the audience, or that there's just really
Well,
one
yeah.
solid audience and there's not a tier of different folks that they should be reaching out to. So there's all this pool that they could be reaching out to, but they're narrowing and focusing down on one, which may not even be who they should be reaching out to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that number one, people probably focus on an audience and they believe that this is their audience. And maybe it was the first audience that they had when they started off
Yeah.
this company that they're with. But don't forget that audiences change over time as much as companies change over time.
Yeah.
So if you say, hey, our audience is this type of person, and then we're never going to change from there, well, then you're going to resonate less and less over time. And this is something that we're seeing in with older industries and older companies trying to hire new talent, right? We
Yeah.
know that the values that Gen X has is very, very different from the values that millennials and Gen Z have. Totally different. And if you're not changing that and understanding that your audience has changed, even from hiring, right? I'm looking for new people to come to my company. You have to understand that people choose companies, Gen Z, millennials, etc. They choose to work for companies for different reasons. And those reasons are, hey, are our values aligned? Um, do we can I see myself growing here, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas maybe the old school way of thinking is, hey, you want to work here because of the money. So you have to resonate, and you have to have that deeper connection, that deeper reason to celebrate why you're working at a particular company.
Yeah, I love that you say, "Do I see myself growing here?" Because, I'm of the older, millennial generation, but I remember when this whole, issue with the younger millennials, and everyone's like, "Oh, they just come in for a year and they leave," and so on and so forth. And companies really couldn't figure it out, right?
Hmm.
And I wasn't in the weeds at that point, but it resonates so much when you talk about it today, because they weren't focused on, yes, they created things of how do we appeal to this generation, how do we keep them here for longer. I mean, Google started creating ping pong tables, and how do we
Yeah,
keep them here, but that's like overworking them. That's not creating really an environment of growth, right? And I think that there were so many different things where they just freaked out about how do they handle this new generation. And then even further, as we started to grow into the folks that were coming in, the Gen Z's, the Gen X's
hmm,
into the workforce, it kind of just plateaued off, and it was what it was if somebody came and left. But at the end of the day, there's churn, right? And I worked for a big media company, and they were focused on the revenue, not necessarily the long-term value of a customer staying on for longer. And so that's why they had so many promo jumpers month over month, versus
yeah.
how do we get somebody to pay our subscription month over month versus just a mass amount of people coming in and our revenue going up. That's not a long-term plan here, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, to me, it comes down to getting the right people in a room, and the founder and the CEO is one of those right people probably, and start asking yourself the question, why are we here? Why do I care about this company? Fundamentally, what am I looking for?
Yeah.
And looking for the why. And I'm sure you're very familiar with the why, how, what type of exercise stuff. But really understanding what moves you, what makes you tick, right? Because that's how we relate to each other, and that's how people are interesting, right? So having a company make the effort to say, hey, you know what? We stand for this, and this is our angle on that. Like for and everybody's angle is unique. But for example, right now, we just finished a project with a playground company at Consequently Creative, and they believe in sustainability. And we're like, okay, well, what do you mean? Everybody uses the word sustainability. What is sustainability for a playground company? They said, well, we're trying to use natural materials, and we build our playgrounds with bolts that anybody can fix.
Oh,
We're
great.
not going to create some proprietary locking system to interlock the
Yeah.
swing or something. We want, if that swing breaks, we want somebody to be able to go to the hardware store and buy the tool and fix it. It has to
That's
be,
great.
common. That's a reflection of sustainability for this particular company.
Yeah.
That's great. Just that story, you're like, oh, that's really cool. I get it. Okay, they care about the community. Kids are going to go back to playing at this playground as soon as possible. I'm relating to it. It makes sense. It's simple and it's unique. It's cool.
Yeah, I like that because so many times, Apples of the world, Teslas of the world, they're always creating things that aren't, that are proprietary to them.
Yeah.
But if you create something where you move with the flow, but then it's less finances for them, it's less revenue for them, right? But I like that they did that because in any point in time, that swing doesn't have to sit there for X amount of months not getting fixed because nobody can find the freaking tool, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's
And
crazy.
and in the case of, like, you mentioned Tesla, my family and I have an EV, uh, an electric vehicle, and it's a VW, right? And it doesn't have the same connector that a Tesla has. And if you go to a shopping mall, and there's dozens of bays for Tesla, and we can't go to it because we don't have a Tesla. That's not cool to me. That's not embracing how electric vehicles should change the world at all, right? And it's awful. Um, I think that over time, of course, at some point, somebody's going to pass a law that says, hey, it has to be standard. One company isn't allowed to, just have their own connector and nobody else can connect to it. Same thing they did with the iPhone, by the way. And people would start using, non-Tesla people should start using Tesla bays for other reasons than the connector, right? There should be other value behind that. So anyway, yeah, it's an evolution, and we've got to change towards it.
I completely agree because if Tesla actually came up with a secondary plug, oh, if you had a VW here, you can buy this extra plug and just plug into Tesla and plug into your car, then they would be, okay, fine. You want it's solutions, right? You want to have your own proprietary
Hmm.
plug, but you're taking over the space in malls and grocery stores and wherever, then create subsidiary plugs, make more money, but then have other cars charge at your station. That's a solution,
Absolutely,
you know. You
that is
you
the
want to
solution.
yeah, you want to be cocky and stand out? Great. Then now create additional plugs for other cars so that they can plug into your system. And they're going to be like, wow, I really love Tesla. Maybe the next lease I have is going to be a Tesla.
You've got it exactly, and it's quite surprising that they haven't done this, because I feel that Tesla at first, were the leaders in electric vehicles, and kind of showed the world, hey, here's how you do it, and you can actually make money doing it.
Yeah, and
That
community
was great,
based.
and a lot of people copied them, but then they stopped with this proprietary plug thing. And you're totally right that yes, people could go and charge in a Tesla charging bay, at a premium price, but they're going there for other reasons. In the
Yes.
same reason, for the same reason that I buy, organic milk that is twice as expensive as the non-organic milk, but I'm buying it for other reasons. I know it's more expensive. I know it's the same. I know it tastes the same. But the other reasons are so much more important. They outweigh that because there's
Exactly.
values. I align with the company. I like the story
Exactly.
that's on the side of the carton. There's so much going on there.
Exactly. So you talk a lot about unlocking a brand's essence. How do you define essence in particular lens, not a poetic ones?
Um,
And a practical lens, sorry, not particular lens.
well, it's really defining an essence is kind of. I guess I alluded a little bit to it earlier. It's about going in and figuring out what they stand for. It's about uncovering all the layers of change within a company and going back to, what excited me the most about starting this company was that I wanted to do something different. Or I am fascinated with so and so, right? Going back to the core that just makes you vibrate and makes you excited about something, and then taking that and building a stronger story around it. It isn't about, oh, we create crayons for children for market share and money. No,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe it's that, oh, fundamentally we believe that the crayon is the first time that a child can be artistic on their own.
Yeah. I like that.
you know so that's what essence is.
Yeah.
And you said without being poetic, it is poetic.
Yeah. It's
You
true.
can't
We
help
can't
it.
get away from that sometimes.
Yeah.
But then there's poetic, and then there's also practical. I mean, it's the concept of, like, when you talked earlier about, coming up with this lavish headline for their website. I mean, I always say the statement because it makes the most sense. I mean, if you sell bikes, don't tell people you sell the wind that blows through their hair. Tell them you sell bikes. What
Hmm.
makes you as a bike company stand out in comparison to other bikes? What problem are you solving for your audience? Because you could be a bike that sells to triathletes. You could be a bike that sells to a normal person that wants to, or a regular person that wants to drive from their house to the beach or their house to their grocery store. What is that problem or
Hmm.
that uplifting feeling that you're creating for them when they ride your bike? Not the sense of, in a way, what they're going to achieve from it, but don't over convolute and, beat a dead horse to come up with a fantastic headline that at the end of the day could be slapped on any brand, not necessarily a
Exactly.
bike company.
Yeah, yeah, we're dealing with this right now, and I'm going to mention this because if my client ever hears this, they're just going to smile about it. um, we're working with a client right now whose headline is brighter minds, brighter outcomes.
Mm. That could be slapped on a lot of things.
Yeah. I have no idea what they do with
Yeah.
that. Brighter minds, brighter outcomes. I'm
Even
thinking.
just hearing that, I'm thinking a box of cereal, like nutrition. Maybe it's a maybe it's a supplement that I'm taking for more clarity in my mind. Maybe it's school for kindergarten.
I
Maybe it's
like
a
that. Yeah.
practical course that's happening. A particular course. I don't know what do they sell?
It's a law firm.
Get out.
Yeah.
Are they an
Yeah. I
educational law
mean,
firm? Do they have courses
no,
or?
no, it's just a law firm. I mean, it sounds great, and I get it. Brighter minds, brighter outcomes. Oh, wow, of course, everybody wants
Oh, because
brighter
they're
minds.
talking about themselves.
Yeah, everybody wants brighter outcomes. But you're not telling me what the value is.
No, they're
You
telling
know?
you that we have a group of folks that have brighter minds, like we are the best in terms of
Yeah.
what we do to give you the brighter outcome, but it doesn't work
No, it
because,
doesn't work.
again, they're talking
And
about themselves.
yeah. And it's okay. I mean, all companies need to go through this.
Sure,
But it's important to recognize it, especially as a business owner. And if any business owners are listening to this podcast, after this podcast, stop, go to your headline and think about it, or ask somebody, hey, does this say what we do? Do you
yeah,
understand what we do from this headline? Because if it doesn't, change it immediately.
yeah,
In fact, change it all the time because companies should change.
I
And
agree.
if your headline's old, make it new.
Yeah, you need to evolve just like we are evolving as humans as we get older. So
Hmm.
What does we talked a lot about branding as like dating and relationships and so on and so forth, but the whole courting aspect also through the customer journey and all of that. I mean, there's so many different pieces of content that you can build the brand up, not just necessarily a headline. But what does healthy brand relationship actually feel like from the customer's point of view?
Um, it's really understanding that there's a courtship going on, that I'm meeting you for the first time. I compare it to dating because in dating, you don't put an engagement ring on somebody's finger on the first date. You know, there's a courtship that needs to happen. You meet, you talk about them, you say a few things. You don't blurt everything out on the first date, right? But brands do that all the time, right? They say everything they do, and it's overwhelming. So I like for brands to really treat um, their customers or their potential customer or their audiences as if they're on a date, in the sense that, tell me one thing about you want me to remember that is remarkable, where I'm going to say, you know what? Oh my gosh, Sasha is fascinating. She does this, and start talking to people about it and saying stuff. So that's where, storytelling and crafting a remarkable story comes into play. When I first meet people, you only remember, most people you forget, right? Most people all sound the same, by the way. The ones you remember are the unique ones. The ones you remember are the funny ones, or the ones that tell you something that's unforgettable, or talk about an amazing trip they went on, which is like something you've never done. Those are the things that you remember. So let's
Yeah,
be memorable with our branding and our relationships, and start building real value that people can connect to and not forget.
I like that. I like that. Talk to me a little bit about how brands should think differently about trust. We're talking about the essence and driving people through the customer
Hmm.
journey, but I think trust plays a big role. We talked a little bit about this when it comes to hiring and how I'm going to grow at this company, but I want to talk about it in the angle, especially when attention is so fragmented these days, right?
Yeah,
I mean, how you have such a short period of time to grab somebody's attention and then also flip them into trusting that you are better than your indirect or direct competitor.
yeah, yeah. Well, I have a lot of things to say on that. So first off, too much information burns information, right? In the sense that you're trying to digest so much information that's spit out at you, that you can't, and you start triaging things and just focusing on what is important to you. But going back to trust, the way trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets, right? Um, but for a company, the only way that you can get to trust is through value. And the mindset of the modern marketer should be the following: that every time that I come into contact with my audience or my potential audience, I'm going to give them value. And why? Because value plus value plus value translates to trust. And that's what's priceless. That's the thing. So this means don't spam people. That's not value.
Yeah.
Don't interrupt them. That's not value either. Speak to them in a meaningful way at the right time. So companies really have to make the effort to understand, well, what is that right time? Who is my audience? What are they looking for? And then how can I be the person who solves a problem for them so they can engage with me?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it's just tiny little pieces of value. I mean, we've got companies like Anthropology focusing on the smell within the company. Why? Because it's a little piece of value. And they know that over time, people are going to go to their store even though they're not looking for anything, because they trust them. So it's really
Yeah.
about that. Focus on the value, and one drop at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. So, I want to bring up the concept of, as we all have been talking about branding, AI, all that kind of stuff. I mean, AI wasn't here only just when um, ChatGPT launched, or Claude, or whatever it is you use from an LLM standpoint, and anything else. There's been AI and
Hmm.
a lot of marketing tools and other tools for a very long time. But I want to talk about the LLM as it relates to branding, because we are entering into a crazy world where AI can generate almost anything you want, right? I mean, obviously, as marketers, we say, use it for creating ideas, use it for, roadblocks, use it for, kind of fine tuning, noodling on things, and so on and so forth. But it's never a copy and paste as it relates to content, right?
Hmm.
What do you see the biggest opportunity for brands to stand out now with AI?
Well, I mean, first off, we're in the, just so this doesn't sound old, I want to say
Yeah,
that we are
yeah,
in the middle of the beginning of AI. We
yeah.
don't know where this is going. A good friend of mine compared it to the GPS, and I don't know if you remember when GPSs first came out.
The
They
CD.
were yeah, they were super lame. You had to program it. You had to. It was constantly rerouting and saying rerouting, rerouting, and it made a lot of mistakes. And you needed to still have a map in the car.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward to now, GPS is fantastic. It tells you far more than where you're going. It talks about traffic. It gives you warnings. You can change and do a detour on a whim, and it reroutes without even asking you. It's fantastic, right? That is a form of AI, if you will. I feel that right now we're in the beginning stages of AI, where GPSs were making all those mistakes and learning. So we don't know how big this is going to be, but at the moment, right now, um, for marketers, yes, it's something you should be aware of. Yes, it's something that you should use as a sounding board. I think it's great for thinking, co-thinking about something and figuring things out. But of course, you shouldn't become lazy, and you shouldn't fall back to to really let it take control. Where AI isn't working well is just copying and pasting. Because I see it on LinkedIn all the time, where people are creating articles saying, "Hey, come and read my new article." You click on it and you're like, "Wait a minute, this wasn't written by a human." It's too there's no soul to it. I don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's something dangerous about AI, and you know uh, maybe it's the paradox of our time, as humans are getting smarter and smarter, um, and relying on technology more. It's also encouraging passivity, just to just sit back, relax, and just let AI almost do the thinking for you, or the choosing for you. And that's really sad, because it'll make a lot of marketing and a lot of branding bland, on one hand. On the other hand, for those who are really driven by creativity, and who have been creative since their childhood and obsessed with brands, and maybe like me, I learned kerning for letters and stuff from the posters on my wall as a child, looking up from my bed. You know, those are things. That gave me a deep understanding of kerning, for example. But you know, so there's far more soul in being really truly creative, and relying on ingenuity and audacity and all those things that make something stand out. That's still very important.
Hmm.
Relying on AI, yeah, it's really good. Don't get me wrong, it's really, really good. Um, but it's not uplifting. It's not taking you to another level and growing. I think that
Yeah.
humans want to progress. We want to learn more. That's how life is interesting.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And it shouldn't be, relying heavily on something versus another, because you still, again, it goes back to your brand being authentic, having that soul. And, a majority of the time, this copy and paste business is, yeah, okay, it's making you create content faster, but it's not creating content that is yours, I mean, all these people now that have become authors, just, I mean, there's courses out there, how to write a book through AI. No, no.
Yeah.
You should not be doing that. And you should not be
Well,
profiting off of that.
exactly. And that's probably a book that won't be read.
Yeah.
But going back to, the beginning of this conversation, we're talking about like spam and how people don't get it and they use these new technologies in the wrong ways. That's a great example. Just, books that are written. Let's create gobs and gobs of books that are written by AI. Oh,
Yeah.
great. More spam, you
Yeah.
know.
I know.
Um,
Into the
but
book
the
world.
person that has an authentic story that's original, I think it'll be easier that for that person to have a voice now, because you're going against the grain, you're going against the herd of all these people that are relying on AI with their eyes closed, sitting on their couches and doom scrolling.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you share a moment where a brand shift, not a marketing tactic, directly changed valuation growth or investor perception?
Sure. So I work with a lot of private equity companies. And for those who just need a little refresher, a private equity firm is a company that buys companies, usually, restructures it a little bit, makes it a little stronger, or might acquire another company and merge those together, etc., in order to find a suitable buyer down the road and sell the company, right? Um, where branding comes in to really change things and lift it up, is is the work that we do at Consequently Creative. And one example is that we recently were working earlier this year with a company called Sightline Applications, and they did software for drones. And it was really interesting. They were really good. Their branding looks pretty old, hadn't been updated in a long time, and their message wasn't really conveying what they stood for or what they did. Meanwhile, they acquired an artificial intelligence company, that would make their software and their offering much better. So the combination of those two things really helped us, and we defined a strategy, which was to focus more on a defense audience, to talk about what defense really meant in the world of drones. Actually, defense means less soldiers on the ground and less people in the battlefield because you're able to use surveillance. We changed the name of the company to Sightline Intelligence. We gave them a new logo. We gave them a far more dramatic look and feel, so it really matched up with their peers, the competition. And we allowed them to really stand out with a unique value proposition that was quite amazing, and leaning into the AI world that this industry is going into. Oh, I can't hear you. Your microphone. You're muted.
Thank you. I love that story because, it really talks through clarity, it really talks through positioning, and it really, bolsters up, what the company was doing from an outreach standpoint. And you really brought it all together to push that messaging forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really remarkable how there's always a good story somewhere. You know, um, Early on with this company, we were talking to some of the employees who had worked at this company from the beginning, and they saw that their sales were going more and more towards defense, and a lot of the people were some of them were quite shocked and were like, wait a minute, we're not a defense contractor. um and it rubbed them the wrong way, and they didn't want to be part of that. But we actually showed them that the story is that they're not a defense contractor. They're actually somebody who allows for less defense to happen, So it's a great story that everybody can celebrate and be like, oh my gosh, now I get it.
Yeah.
I want to be part of this. I want to be part of this movement. And that's the trick for branding and marketing companies, is to find that angle, find that value that's going to lead to trust sooner,
Yeah.
because it's remarkable and it stands out.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing that up, because there isn't just branding and communication that's always about external, for customers, but it's also about internal when you're shifting. how do you make sure that you bring everybody on board so that you don't lose your best employee or so on and so forth because they feel all of
Absolutely.
a sudden that the values have shifted. Simultaneously, that also translates into, when other customers and consumers have been buying from you, how do you upsell them now into a different sort of, product or service, and how do you keep that communication going? Or, if you have a big splash on your homepage, to ensure them that you haven't changed and that they can still buy, the current product or service that they have been buying for you from years. So
Hmm.
change is important to communicate both from an internal and external standpoint, as you mentioned. So thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, what you said just made me think of Apple, that a company that's changed dramatically and brought in new products all the time. And people are such fans of Apple that I'm sure that if Apple came up with, shoes tomorrow, people would just be like, "Oh my gosh, these are the best shoes in the world."
Yeah.
But there are things within Apple that are there for value only, because people trust them. So, for example, the Genius Bar at an Apple store, it's not there to repair iPhones and show you how to use your computer. No, it's there to maintain the relationship that Apple has with its customers.
Yeah.
And everybody working at the Genius Bar knows that. And because they know that, they're treating people in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not about a
Mark,
transaction.
yes, yes, I completely agree. I mean, in the end it is, but it's not, that's not the beginning. That's not the beginning of the courtship, as we mentioned, going back to
Yeah.
dating, right? So
Yeah.
Mark, thank you for reminding us that brands, are built on the importance of value, really, at the end of the day, and
Hmm.
really, how do we break through the noise? But before we let you go, we like to do something fun where we like to ask our guests one word, one myth, and one habit. So whatever comes to mind, just fire away. What's one word that encapsulates branding is?
For me, audacity.
Oh, I love that word. One habit founders should build if they want a stronger brand relationship.
Be open to different. Look for something different. Speak to different people. Ask questions because you'll learn more. If don't surround yourself by other founders.
Yeah.
Go to the mechanic on the corner and ask them, "Hey, what's the worst day you've ever had? What's the best day you've ever had? What gets you excited about fixing a car?"
Yeah.
And you'll uncover some fantastic answers.
I love that. It's what I always like to say. Step outside of just your competitors and look at what other people are doing in other industries. That's great. One myth, one branding myth you wish would finally die.
Oh, geez, am I ready for this? I don't know. What branding myth? Well, the myth that it's a set it and forget it. That, oh, all we need is a site redesign, or all we need is a new logo, and then they do that, and people stop. To me, that's just the beginning. Once you have your new logo or you have a new website, that's just like putting the boat in the water. Now what? Okay, we got
Yeah.
to maintain it. We got to make sure it stays on a steady course. We have to be open to how it's going to navigate the waters and change. That's the thing where so many brands fail with this, of not understanding that. Okay, now what? And what happens as a result, Sasha, is that you have these brands that are stale, where you go to their social media and yeah, they did something 2 years ago, or they made a change to their logo and you wonder why. You know, Sometimes like wasn't it Airbnb had a brand new logo change and they did a big reveal, and it was just the font was slightly different and they made the letters a little tighter. I don't get that.
Yeah.
That was a huge letdown for their audience. Their audience was looking forward to something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that they needed to change their logo, by the way. It's a really cool logo.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. This has been really great and truly insightful. We really appreciate your time in helping us
Likewise.
break down really branding in its crux and in a different manner that most people are used to hearing. So we appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.